Mike McCarthy is officially staying in Dallas, which I think I can take a victory lap on in predicting would be the case for the as a man with a deep personal connection with the mind of billionaires. Jerry Jones is sort of seen and portrayed as this knee-jerk, reactionary, crazy fantasy football general manager, and yet he is always absurdly patient when it comes to head coaches, like way past the point where fans would have gotten rid of the guy. Jerry still gives him another swing of the bat and sees where he can go. So even though this is one of the most embarrassing losses in a long history of embarrassing playoff losses, I kind of always felt like they would see, we've won 12 games 3 straight years. I can't get rid of that guy. We're too close.
Yeah, I think you made the right call there. I think you do deserve a pat on the back for that one. And honestly, it probably is the rational move. I know we react to playoff games. I know it was an extremely ugly playoff loss, but particularly on that side of the ball, on offense in Dallas, you had Dak Prescott like singing praises of the offense they've been running and how much easier it was for him to do, and how he was like, it was remarkable how like you tie concepts to his footwork and like all these, like, I can't believe I wasn't doing this my whole career. Like, I think you sell yourself on. There's more upside there potentially in another year going forward. We'll continue to add talent to this team. Because, again, like, they did make some kind of, like, for them, like, adding Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore via trade is kind of them being aggressive. That yeah. is, but it's still, like, all right, our number 2 receiver is 30 years old now, and our number 2 corner, who became our number 1 corner, is, like, 34. Like, they were aggressive moves for the Dallas Cowboys, and both of them were fine. They were productive. But there's still more there to tap into. I would say, and again, it's only, this is reactionary, but Dan Quinn, they beat up on the bad teams, but every good offense they played kind of took him to the woodshed. And it sounds like if he doesn't get a head coach job, he'll be right back there as well.
That's the thing. I kind of agree. I predicted that this would be the way they would go, and I'm still not 100% sure what the answer is if you're Jerry Jones. I think fundamentally, I think they're in a really difficult spot in terms of figuring out what the pathway is, because 3 straight seasons of 12 wins is not an easy thing to do in the NFL. Even like level setting for, okay, most of the wins were against not good teams and the losses were against the good teams. It's still not easy to do that, right? Like it's a difficult thing to just beat the bad teams in the NFL, even if you're at a level where the good teams beat you. So you look at that and you say, it's too good to just dump that because we lost in the postseason again. On the other hand, clearly something does need to change, because we can't just keep going 12 wins and then getting dumped, right? So what is the answer to that? Like, if you're Jerry Jones and you're looking at this and saying, right, I've decided the baseline is too important. I am keeping Mike McCarthy. Too much is good to blow the whole thing up and go in a new direction. I'm almost certainly going to need to give Dak Prescott his next top of the market contract, salary, which is making things even harder for me. So what is the thing I'm changing to ensure that there's a different outcome in the future? Because there's, that classic line of insanity, the definition of insanity being to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? So if you're Jerry Jones, you've concluded this isn't the thing we're changing. What is the thing we're changing?
It's a good question. I would just say this isn't really answering your question, but I also wonder if he looks at the division and is like, all right, Philly is falling apart and imploding. The Commanders are a couple of years away, and the Giants, need to figure out a lot in their situation. So there's probably some element of that too. Like, I don't want to disturb this and break this up, because we might become the first team to, win the division 2 years in a row in 25 years or whatever that fun stat is. So yeah, that's a good point, though. Like, because I don't know. When I say, like, they could be more aggressive, they're going to be spending so much money on Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. You're talking probably 55 a year plus for Dak and 30 plus a year for CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, they could add more in free agency than they normally do. They're one of the smaller spenders in free agency among all the teams in the league almost every offseason. I don't know, because if you're not changing the coaching staff, you're not changing the quarterback, and you probably aren't going to be a crazy aggressive spending in free agency. Tyron Smith might be done. We don't know. There's more kind of question marks there too. It's a good question. I don't know. You just hope that variance swings in your favor and you just like get lucky. But the NFC wasn't good this year. Obviously the Packers are playing good football right now, but you hosted at home the youngest offense in NFL history to make the playoffs, and you got demolished.
Yeah. I also do wonder sometimes whether, it's always easy from the outside to say, here's the thing you do, here's the radical move you make, and it's usually one of two things. It's go all in or blow it up and rebuild, right? Like, those are your two options. I do wonder sometimes, is there value in simply saying, if you keep knocking on the door, one year it's going to break, it's going to break your way. Like, we don't necessarily, I mean, Dak Prescott's his own difficult conversation because he just had an arguably MVP caliber season, and yet the consensus would be, again, like it was the last time he got given a big contract, like he's not worth $60 million a year, right? That's a difficult problem to square in and of itself, let alone the rest of the thing. But if you're Dallas and you're like, if we simply keep going 12 and if we simply keep winning 12 games, getting into the playoffs, like eventually we'll win a couple of these games because we're here every year and most teams aren't. And that's, like when you go back to the 80s or the 90s or whatever, right? And those 49ers teams and those Dallas teams, like they kept running up against each other in the playoffs, but like it didn't mean that or Buffalo, right? 4 straight Super Bowl losses. Like the answer to that wasn't, let's do something crazy different. Like, we're in the Super Bowl every year. Sometimes you're going to go 0-4. I don't know that the answer to that is to do something radical next year. It's like, just keep hitting on the door and hope one of them goes your way at some point. Like, is that the approach that Jerry Jones is taking at this point? Like, we are 80% of the way there, and we just need a bit of luck for the next 20%.
I get, in theory, yeah, you'd think so. And obviously it sounds crazy, and Dallas in particular always gets made fun of because like this has been their thing for so long, is they get to the playoffs and don't advance far enough to actually, what is that? They haven't been in a championship game in however long. So you could argue it's crazy. I also think to a degree that is kind of how football works. Like, you get injury variance in your way,
right?
Or let's say this year they don't lose in the first round, and then there's an upset for the Niners, at some point in the first 2 rounds before the conference championship game. Who's going to challenge? Like, okay, then you're hosting the NFC Championship game against like the Buccaneers or something. Like that can happen. So it's a tough question. It's like you said, you're not going to tear it down, and maybe you go all in, but that's never been their MO. They're a draft and develop franchise. They don't do those type of things. Like I said, Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore in one offseason for me was like, oh whoa, Jerry's getting crazy over here. So yeah, I think it's the status quo. I know he says like, oh, I want to win every year. I want to get Super Bowl more than anybody else. He's 81 years old. I get all those things. Honestly, I think they want to say we want to have a shot. We want to be in the conversation to maybe win. And Green Bay's the same thing, and Packers fans hate it too. They've made it further, yes, but they just want to get in the dance, and then they understand that things can swing your way. I think we're too used to the Patriots. They destroyed all concept of how we view football, and it doesn't happen. It's not really a thing. You just be a playoff team and then hope things swing in your favor.
You're right. It really has ruined like everybody's perception of what should be attainable. I mean, Dan Marino was like an all-time great quarterback, went his entire giant long career and only made it to 1. And didn't win it. Like, the guy made it to 1 Super Bowl, let alone winning the damn things multiple times. And then Brady and Belichick come along and just break the scale for everybody. But the other thing I think that makes it difficult for Dallas and Jerry Jones is I felt this year more than most that Dallas is now really fighting against this like psychological history. Like, it's a psychological block more than anything else at this point. So that's the thing you need to break down. It's not like, oh, we are like, here's where the huge flaws on the roster that keep getting exposed in the postseason are. It's like, no, your roster is good enough to win a championship, but when you get to a game against Green Bay and suddenly you're in a hole, everybody just capitulated. Like, they just ran up the white flag and went, nope, not next year. Time to do it again. Like, we failed again. They immediately crumbled. That is your problem. And that, I think, is a way more difficult thing to figure out how to fix than, oh, we just change a coach or we change a quarterback or we do whatever. It's like, how do I fix an institutional psychological block now that's going on 20 years?
I find that piece fascinating because McCarthy got asked about it in the press conference. I think it was, paraphrasing, but to a degree, like, do you guys feel that weight and carry that? And he was like, absolutely not. We're not.
Right.
I'm not going to apologize for what happened in Dallas, and neither are any of the players for what happened before, 2020, whatever year he first got there. And it's probably true to a degree, but like you said, it's also like, no, like that. that angst is going to be permeating the building, and like you can't ignore it or deny that it exists, even if you correctly say no, it's not our problem. We didn't do that. It's still there,
Yeah.
kind of just like looming over your shoulder, whether you want to accept it or not.
It's palpable. I mean, it was palpable during that game. You could feel them start to tense up, and then when it really got away from them, you could feel it. Like was it Greg Olson on that game? Like he spent the first quarter being like, "What the hell is wrong with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb? Like this is bizarre." And it was the whole thing. You could feel it, like as you said, looming over the whole building, being like, "It's gonna happen again." And then it happened again, and like they just collapsed. So I don't know how you fix that as Jerry Jones, as the GM, as the owner of this team. But like, I think that is their single biggest problem right now, and I don't think that gets fixed by just making a knee-jerk change somewhere. Now maybe you sweep aside Mike McCarthy and you bring in somebody with a better, grasp of human psychology or whatever, and that guy's able to do it. But I certainly don't think that's a given. And you need to find a guy that not only has a better grasp of human psychology, but can also continue the 12-win baseline for the next, to make use of it. Otherwise, what's the point? So I do kind of feel like the Cowboys and Jerry Jones are in a tough spot.
No, I don't think you're wrong, and I don't know that changing, changing the OC, like replacing Brian Schottenheimer. I thought their offense during the regular season did a lot of cool things and did depart from a lot of, what McCarthy in the end of the Green Bay days kind of got flack for, like just running slant flat and like not really being creative with a lot of what he was doing. I was impressed by a lot of what Dallas did this year. So it's a good point. I think we are getting into the waters of just like, it's almost like Atlanta Braves for a baseball reference, like where they just made the playoffs like every single year, but just could not get over the hump. And then they finally just broke through.